is on. Is on.
Is everyone ready?
I am.
I'm good.
All right. Are we?
Can I like say something?
Oh, we still need our third judge because this is a dreaming thing and not a judge. Okay.
I'm so excited about judging y'all again, Gus and Arshita, because y'all were great last round. And I get U of I people. Like, what a dream. I was so surprised. I was like, this is a California tournament. Why is Illinois here? Like, I feel so heard. Have y'all had a blast being up super, super late for rounds last night?
Yeah, we were up to 11 last night, and it was it was fun getting to bed last night.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting results at 11:45.
I'm on Eastern time, so I was like,
wow.
please don't make me judge the last round. I don't want to be up all night judging. And they're like, that's fair. I was like, give me one of the first ones each morning so someone else can sleep in, and then let me not stay up till midnight. That seems like a good trade. Who are we? I think we're waiting for the chair. Yes. What time was the topic announced? 5?
It was supposed to start at 2:28, so I think I'm going to go into the hospitality hub and ask them about it.
Okay, awesome. I was trying to make like a judgment call on when to call Steve, but yeah, awesome.
I'm just confirming that we're still missing a judge in this round. Okay, we're tracking them down for y'all. Stand by.
Is it cool if our debate chair joins as a spectator to this round? Does anyone have a problem with that?
I believe that spectators aren't supposed to come in just because the system can't handle that many people, and that they should go to the YouTube stream, which I have.
Does anyone happen to? Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Do you mind sending it in the chat, please?
Yep. There you go.
Thank you. I'll send it. Oh.
Howdy, everyone. Am I the last one in here?
Yeah. Hey, Steve.
I had the ballot got pushed. I got the ballot back. The ballot got pushed. It's been fun. First tournament of the year. What are we going to do?
No, yeah, you're fine. You're not even technically the third judge that's on the ballot that I have. So it's been, you know? Okay, now I updated you.
Oh, wow.
Is it okay if I like make an announcement of sorts before we start?
Fine with me.
Okay, so of course we debated the other team yesterday, and I'd like to say, I thought I was going to be able to handle the speed, but I'm hard of hearing. So if we could slow down the speed a little bit today, that'd be preferable. Just based, it's a completely different experience with they're not in the room, so it's a lot more difficult to hear. It's a lot more difficult to communicate. So if we can slow down the speed, that'd be helpful.
That's totally fine. If we do end up going like too fast or anything, could you just like open your mic and then just tell us like, hey, slow down. Every time that happens with me, like I just go back on the flow in case you missed it, and then I just repeat what I said.
Okay, thank you.
I just got out of an IPDA round. I wasn't here for topic announced. Can anybody give me the topic or put it up in chat or something?
Yeah, I'll read it off. The United States federal government should enact a policy to protect the manufacturing industry in the United States.
Protect the manufacturing industry?
In the United States, yes.
The industry is singular?
Industry, yes.
Cool. All right.
All right.
So
I'm for staff, so is anybody not ready right now? And judges, do you care if I give an off-time or on-time roadmap? All right, I'll give an off-time roadmap. Resolutional analysis, then 3 on case. Starting now, the affirmative stands before you to affirm the resolution that the United States federal government should enact a policy to protect the manufacturing industry in the United States. We're defining this as a policy round because of the word should. Protect, we're defining specifically as securing the longevity of. Manufacturing industry, we're defining as a branch of manufacturing and trade based on preparations of products. So the actual assembly of things that go into various modes of production, or the final goods themselves. The plan is to shift all fossil fuel subsidies towards subsidies that support solar, wind, nuclear, and hydroelectric power under the Clean Energy Manufacturing Initiative, which is a Department of Energy-wide commitment to enhancing United States manufacturing competitiveness. The weighing mechanism for this round we're proposing is utilitarianism. The first advantage is the environment. The uniqueness on this is carbon dioxide levels are the highest they have ever been in 650,000 years. 19 of the past 20 years since 2001 have been the warmest years ever recorded. We're seeing unprecedented runaway climate change that could completely run away and be irreversible by 2050 if we don't stop a 2-degree increase. We are on the brink of collapse. We need massive investment in order to switch our industry, all of our manufacturing industry, over to renewable energy, specifically to solar, wind, nuclear, and hydroelectric power. There's projections that say that United States oil reserves could run out in 53 years if we maintain our current standards. If we are committed to providing longevity for United States manufacturing and protecting it from trade issues that may arise from fossil fuel dependence, we need to ensure that we're entirely on a renewable energy grid. The link on this is a main reason for this is for all of this climate change is the use of fossil fuels to create energy. Fossil fuels are incredibly polluting. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. That's something that's common sense. Burning fossil fuels is terrible for the environment, creates greenhouse gases that trap heat. The internal link on this plan lessens the burning of fossil fuels through the increased use of green energy, which without United States subsidization does not have the competitiveness in the markets today. So by subsidizing green energy, we can ensure that it is profitable to use and protects our industry's longevity by allowing them to use that green energy to power their various modes of production. The impact on this is it lessens the carbon levels. It avoids climate collapse, which will lead to heat death of the planet. It avoids biodiversity collapse, which would kill all of the species on our planet eventually, and it lessens the chance of extinction through climate change. This brings me to my second point, that is de-escalation of conflicts with China, specifically in the realms of trade. The uniqueness on this is that China is currently the world's largest producer of wind and solar energy. In addition to this, green energy is inherently cooperative. It requires the resources of multiple nations in order to produce green energy that is actually effective at reducing climate change. What this would instantiate is competition between the United States and China, but in a good way. There's competition to do the most good. We're collaborating essentially on creating programs that better the world in the long run and can help both of our manufacturing industries. There's a term for this in economics called co-opetition, where multiple actually drives collaboration and cooperation. Green energy is inherently non-extractive. It does not require the resources or land of another country potentially to power your own industries or power your own country. It's a non-zero sum game. It's about efficiency, not about land or resource usage. In the future, there's projections that there will be 50 million green energy jobs. The United States has 3 million of the 11 million current jobs. We want to protect our stake in that green energy market, and by doing so, we can protect American industry by making sure that we have a major stake in the manufacturing industry. We can't expect this to happen on its own without subsidization. Currently in the status quo, nuclear energy isn't profitable for at least 30 years after it started. We need to subsidize for it to maintain its effectiveness and actually get off the ground. Solar, wind, hydroelectric energy are all very expensive to start up, but pay dividends in the long run. So by subsidizing, we can allow more industries to get onto those green energy programs. So what that'll lead to is more investment in those industries, better job creation in those industries, boosting and protecting the American manufacturing industry for the future. The link on this is that increasing innovation in manufacturing necessarily protects our industries, allowing them to continue producing. If we run out of oil, there's not going to be any oil to burn to produce energy. It also instantiates job production in these industries, boosting the industry to stop it from dying out due to competitiveness of other foreign markets. If we don't do this investment, we are leaving the entire market to China, and we're going to have to rely on China to ship in those products in the future, destroying our economy because it makes it more difficult for them to produce. It's particularly important in the US because there are large tracts of unused land and high unemployment. The impact on this, again, it avoids climate collapse and it avoids problems with China because we're reducing overall competition on the manufacturing sphere, and we're actually working together with them in collaboration. Finally, our final advantage is climate justice. The uniqueness on this, fossil fuels are bad for concentrated areas and neighborhoods, which mainly contain minority people, people of color, and people in poverty. Per the environmental health perspectives, communities of colors in neighborhoods with high poverty rates face greater health risks in terms of air pollution, which is caused by climate change. The link on this, the burning of fossil fuels hurts the air quality, and toxic waste dumps in the disposal of fossil fuels near these neighborhoods risks their health. The internal link on this, the plan presents a means of the increasing the usage of green energy, which will not have negative impacts on air quality as fossil fuels do. And the impact on this, it lessens health risks for marginalized peoples and impoverished individuals. Thank you.
Ready for flex? Okay, awesome. Just really quick, I wanted to clarify the plan text with you. What exactly are the subsidies shifting to?
Yeah, we're shifting fossil fuel subsidies, so that's oil and coal, to solar, wind, nuclear, and hydroelectric power.
Okay, awesome. The next question, how well are the solar, wind, and nuclear like manufacturing markets right now? Like how well are they doing?
If you compare them to China, not very well. China is the largest manufacturer. We need to be increasing that. So
is that sector failing right now? Is my question.
it's not necessarily failing, but it's at the risk of failing if we don't up our production.
Okay, so how is that possible considering like solar, like government investments in solar are like basically outnumber all subsidies to coal and other forms of green energy?
Solar's one of the things the government subsidizes. It doesn't subsidize wind, nuclear, hydroelectric power to quite the degree it subsidizes.
How is it on the brink though? That's my question. How is it on the brink?
The other industries mostly are on the brink, and they need more money. Just because they have more money than fossil fuels doesn't mean they're not on the brink of collapse.
All right. So your plan essentially is to protect one area of the manufacturing industry by shifting subsidies away from another area of the manufacturing industry.
Protecting that manufacturing industry expands to other industries, protecting them in the long run.
So that would mean you are also in turn expanding fossil fuel and coal industries. Is that correct?
No, because they're eventually going to fail because they won't be profitable.
So how is that protecting that part of the manufacturing industry? I'm just trying to
protecting the manufacturing industry in general doesn't mean every single industry is good.
Okay.
Yeah, check the uniqueness on our first contention. There's certain industries we don't need to protect.
Okay. For the link level of your, actually that's time.
Can everyone hear me? Cool. It's going to be 3 off and then on case. Is anybody not ready? Cool. And then again, if go too fast, just call speed. Sorry about that if like you felt excluded from the last round. Sorry about that. Okay. Time starts now. First is going to be T on manufacturing industry. A is the definition. The manufacturing industry is based on fabrication, processing, or preparation of products from raw materials and commodities. This includes all refined metals and minerals derived from extracted ores, lumber, wood, and pulp products. B is going to be the violation. They specifically picked renewable energy instead of defending the entire manufacturing industry. 2 is going to be the effects and extra topicality or illegitimate violations which don't meet the prima facie burden of the affirmative. C is going to be standards. First argument under this is going to be limits. Our definition sets the most precise limits. The most precise limits is best because it enables us to better understand the individual words in the resolution and thereby have a better debate. 2 is going to be field context. Our definition is from NASA.gov, a United States federal government organization that's involved in manufacturing and procurement. Understanding the topic from the standpoint of experts in the field is key to education. D is going to be voters, a priori for fairness and predictable ground. 2 is going to be fairness is the internal link to education, and non-topical education is bad education because we can't truth test the affirmative. 3 is also not being topical leads to the collapse of debate, which is bad. First, DISAB, politics. Uniqueness is going to be that Trump is losing re-election and the status quo due to union voters. 1 under this is going to be that attracted by promises of job creation, infrastructure projects, and expanded trade opportunities. More than 1/3 of American labor union members voted for Trump in 2016 from Gazette 2020. 8 point under this is going to be that after nearly 3 years of what they see as tax cuts for the wealthy, hostile workplace policies, and trade wars, low union leaders and rank and file members predict Trump won't get the vote share in 2020 that he scored in 2016. 2nd under this is going to be that currently the union vote is key to the 2020 election. Union voters in the status quo are projected to go back to the Democratic Party. 3rd uniqueness, independent voters are currently going for Biden, but have identified the economy as their top priority for their voting decision in 2020. 8 point under this is going to be that Kaiser Family Foundation, founded September 10th, the economy has now secured a spot as the top issue in the 2020 election, with 1/3 of registered voters saying it will be the most important issue in deciding their vote for president. Link is going to be that plan passes and to protect the environment, manufacturing industry in the United States. 8 point under this is going to be that this allows Trump to rally one of his core bases. B is going to be that changes specific swing votes who have contributed to the Democratic lead in the status quo and allows Trump to win right before the election. 2nd link is going to be the industry economy is key to voters. 8 point under this is going to be that Trump's strongest thing he has done in his presidency is what he claims he has done for the economy and specifically manufacturing and jobs and protecting domestic industry. B point under this is going to be that 1/3 of registered voters say the economy is going to be the most important issue of deciding their vote for the president. Internal links is going to be that 1, Trump re-election leads to the gutting of social safety nets. 2 is going to be that Trump re-election election leads to the passing of policies that hurt the environment. 3 is going to be that the election leads to the restrictions on immigration. Impacts. Re-election means that 1, another Trump term will mean severe and irreversible changes in climate change. 8 point under this is going to be that more Trump administration will ensure the continued escalation of global temperatures. Sub point under this, everything Trump has done pushes in the opposite direction. 4 more years of Trump backed by a Republican Senate will mean a heavy drag on global efforts to control carbon. Progress on decarbonization will slow in the United States, and the example America sets will slow the other nations' progress as well, making the aforementioned 10-year mobilization all but impossible. That is a difference that will reverberate for centuries. Second impact is going to be immigration issues lead to highly probable impact of dehumanization and genocide. Third is going to be appointing a new SCOTUS judge means a 6-3 majority for a generation at the very least, leading to reversal on women. Third impact, appointing a new SCOTUS judge means a 6-3 majority for a generation at least, leading to reversal on women's reproductive rights and reversal on climate change policies and immigration. Disadvantage 2, Chinese backlash. Uniqueness 1, China is leading global manufacturing now, resolving trade conflicts. 8 point under this is going to be, according to data published by the UN Stats Division, China accounted for 28% of global manufacturing output in 2018. That puts the country more than 10 percentage points ahead of the United States, which used to have the world's largest manufacturing sector until China took over in 2010. Uniqueness. U.S. relations improving. Second is now is key as China is ramping down production globally as demand has leveled out. Links. Plan would lead to China feeling challenged. One under this is going to be that plan passes and leads to trade conflict with China. 2 is going to be that plan would be perceived as a walk back on recent improvements in relations. BBC says that U.S.-China relationship is in a delicate state. A wrong move from either side will cause one of the countries to completely back up. Internal links. 1, China would be forced to ramp up production again to outpace the U.S. Turning case due to low prices. Impacts global economy collapse and extinction. 1, econ collapse from a global manufacturing trade war would impact all developing economies which have higher populations and higher starvation rates than the United States. Markets in India and Africa would get wrapped up in a price gouging conflicts and lead to mass layoffs in the world. 2 is going to be war with China goes nuclear. On to the on case. I'm going to make a quick case dump on this. You can just like put it at the top or like do a new sheet if you want. 1 is going to be U.S. manufacturing center is bad for the environment. The 8 point under this is going to be that according to the EPA, metal machinery and wood products is one of the most toxic production cycles poisoning the American environment. In 2016, 6.6 million pounds of toxins are going to the environment. B is going to be that wood handling spewed 9.8 million pounds of toxins in the ecosystem in 2016. C is going to be that in 2017, the manufacturing sector released 29.6 million pounds of toxins into the environment, more than double the electronics. D is going to be that fabricated metals released 46.4 million tons of toxins into the American air. Onto their topic case, their plan just cross-apply everything that I lined out in a case dump. They don't like do anything which relates to the environment when like they still fabricate metals in their post-plan world, and wood handling, they do nothing to solve for that. So all they say is like, they even say like this helps expand like manufacturing in general, and they want certain industries to die, which is going to be both like detrimental to the economy of the United States, and it's going to hurt the environment even more because now we're going to have to want to ramp up productions in the future for the advantage one of the environment. For their uniqueness scenario about how we have the bad environment, just yet there's going to be magnified by the affirmative when wood handling spews 9.8 million pounds of toxins into the ecosystem in 2016 alone. For their links of using of fossil fuels is polluting. We say right now that this is going to be worse than the affirmative when they have like things where that they don't allow to fix. Like in 2017, the manufacturing sector released 29.6 million pounds of toxins into the environment, more than double of electronics and fabricated metals released 49.4 million tons of toxins into the American air. For their impacts of decrease in carbon, they do none of this. For the second of biodiversity collapse, they continue biodiversity collapse. What's up?
Gus, make the REM argument here.
Which one?
The REM argument, rare earth minerals argument.
Yeah, so rare earth mineral arguments. So what we're specifically saying is like for getting lithium and cobalt for green energy is going to be the increase of exploitation in the labor force in like countries that we have laid out on our uniqueness scenarios of developing nations like Africa, in Africa, and places like India. For the advantage too of de-escalating with China, cross-apply the uniqueness scenarios we were laying out with like increased Chinese backlash. But all they say is that competition is good, but we specifically line out in our uniqueness scenario how Chinese global manufacturing now is going to be increased and cut out the job losses, continue job losses in the United States. So they have no impacts for like increasing innovation and avoiding climate collapse. If anything, they exacerbate the issue. And cross-apply the examples of like they say green is non-extractive and like it doesn't hurt the mostly like people. But where do they get the lithium and cobalt for green energy? They continuously exploit the labor force and use literal slave labor and child labor to do this. For the advantage 3 of climate justice, they get no access to this at the point in which they still allow the exploitative labor practices of child labor and literal slaves. So for their link scenario about hurting air quality, they don't fix this with the case dump that I laid out of like increasing toxins for their impacts of decreasing health risks. No, they exacerbate these issues as more people extract green energy and like continuously use slave labor and child labor. So they're going to be increasing the health risks when children literally have to work in lithium mines. And that's time.
2 minutes or 1 minute of flex? Do you guys have any statistics to support what percentage of pollution is accounted for from the fabricated metals and wood cutting?
Yeah, so among all of the different processes involved with manufacturing, it's the number one. It contributes the most to pollution.
Okay. Do those numbers account for the fossil fuel burning that is needed to use those industries or to power those industries?
Yeah, it comes from the EPA report on the most toxic industries.
Okay, so I'm out of time. I'm gonna give an off-time roadmap. So I'll do case and then T 2 days.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Case in the order of whatever the speed, the 1AC, whatever. And then the T and then the 2 DAs. What's that case? Is that environment de-escalation?
Yeah.
All right. Is anybody not ready? All right, first on the environmental advantage, I'm just going to I flowed this under like the topic, the evidence dump that my opponent did under the environmental advantage. So basically, they said that U.S. manufacturing is bad for the environment. This is extremely non-unique in the sense that this is going to happen regardless. U.S. manufacturing is going to happen regardless in the status quo, regardless of the plan or not, because people consume. So this is going to happen regardless because of the economy of the United States. People are going to, just because this plan is implemented, just because this plan was not implemented doesn't mean that people are not going to consume anymore. So people are still going to consume. This is completely non-unique evidence. In addition, you can basically cross-apply everything that my partner just did in cross-ex in the sense that there are other means to prove. This this is renewable in the sense that once you have all these things produced, there isn't any extra energy that needs to go into it because, of course, it's green energy. So nothing else needs to go into this sector. Whereas with fossil fuels, you have to one produce the machines, and then you have to actually find the things that are fuel for this. But if the fuel is renewable in this sense, then this is better. Secondly, they said that metals are bad. This is not unique. And they also said that this is worse than that fossil fuels are bad for the that this is worse than the AF. And then they also made the argument about the rare earth metals. So in a sense, what the negative team is saying is that they are going to prefer the usage of fossil fuels over that of green energy just because the REMs are used. We are going to say that regardless of, we are going to say that green energy is always better than the usage of fossil fuels, and that through investing within the sector, we can lead to a betterment of labor standards and a betterment of labor standards for those people who are attempting to find the REMs for these machines. And so in a sense, the negative is preferring fossil fuels, but we are saying since we are investing in this, we are going to be able to do this. So the negative team can only win if they can prove that fossil fuels are better than green energy, and I don't think they're going to be able to do this. On the de-escalation flow, I'm going to do a lot of work on the de-escalation flow on their China DA sort of thing. So they said that I'm just going to do all the work on the DA number 2. So on the climate justice, they said that labor standards are bad. Once again, we're investing within this sector, which would mean that we could increase labor standards. In a sense, we can find we can get REMs at a better labor standard because we are investing within the sector. An issue in the status quo is that this sector is not very invested in, and as my partner, you can look towards all the evidence that my partner stated that this is a more or less failing sector for the most part, and that's due to a lack of funding. And due to that lack of funding, they're looking for the cheapest methods possible through labor. They're looking for the cheapest labor possible, and due to this labor being so cheap, they exploit the people within who have these REMs, and they find it for they find the REMs for the cheapest they can. But through investing within the sector, we can change that because we would have a lot more money. And one of the biggest factors now preventing us from being able to benefit from this is a lack of funding, and we would be able to increase funding through the plan. Moving on to off case. So firstly, we meet because REMs are used to produce this. So they cannot use the REM argument and then say that we are not manufacturing something that is physical. We are not, because we're using green energy, because solar power isn't necessarily physical. What's this for?
The rare charge one.
Because green energy isn't necessarily physical, they can't use the REM argument and say that we aren't necessarily something physical. They cannot use this REM argument because we are actually using something that is physical. So firstly, we meet. Secondly, we also meet because this expands to other industries. Green energy is a lot more efficient than any other means of energy. So this leads to an expansion of other industries, which would rely on using electricity or whichever other means to power their machines. So basically,
to defend, which means that we are left without an
Live
ability to
streaming
actually
is
link
on.
to actually have a link to any of their advantages through our disadvantages. That's going to be really key for education and fairness. So let's go to the T sheet now. I'm just going to go line by line here. First, on the interpretation, they say we meet because green energy is like physical, and that also means that like we can't make this REM argument because green energy is like a physical like representation of this technology. That's not a we meet. If you look at our definition, which I'll extend here, the manufacturing industry is based on fabrication, processing, or preparation of products from raw materials and commodities. This includes all refined metals and minerals derived from extracted ores, lumber, wood, and pulp products. The interpretation is very specific about what sort of materials are involved in the manufacturing industry and also what processes are involved in the manufacturing industry. The affirmative has the burden of defending the entirety of the manufacturing industry because the resolution itself doesn't actually allow for any specification beyond that. That's also going to be key for the violation, which I'll extend here. They specifically picked renewable energy instead of defending the entire manufacturing industry, which rendered us unable to actually win a link on the disadvantages because they're able to say basically like wave their hand and say that's not not us. We're only this one part of the manufacturing industry that doesn't apply to what your disadvantage is talking about. That's also going to be really important for their other We Meet, where they talk about how it's basically the same as any other manufacturing, but it's fundamentally not if you look at the way that they've responded to our other positions, which I'll go into more when I talk about proven abuse. But next, I want to respond to their counter interpretation. They have basically said that that manufacturing is what is used to produce goods for people. Two responses to this and two reasons why this interpretation is bad. First is going to be that it really explodes at affirmative ground. Essentially, affirmative gets access to an infinite amount of affirmatives because any process that is involved in producing goods for people, including research and other like research and development involved in technology that is outside of the scope of the manufacturing industry. They could have talked about vaccines. They could have talked about health, like goods for the people wasn't specified in this interpretation at all. That also makes it impossible for the negative to be able to prepare for all of these infinite affirmatives, which is a key reason why we've lost fairness in this debate. And as you probably remember, the key reason why we're going to be preferring fairness in this debate is because fairness is the internal link to education. But going on to the standards, which were completely untouched by the affirmative, extend across limits, and we need to have precise limits in this debate in order to gain a better understanding of the words in the resolution and also have a better debate as a result of that. Without having a commonplace understanding of what the most precise definition of a particular term is, that renders us incapable of being able to engage in an actual debate with Clash. And Clash is going to be extremely key to actually garnering proper education or good education in this debate. I also want you to extend across the field context standard, which is specifically key for education here. Our definition comes from NASA, which is a government organization already involved in procurement of manufactured goods and like involved in the processes that go into manufacturing, which is going to be really important because they don't have any source for their definition. It's important to consider the experts in the field. It's important to consider the experts in the field when we're debating a resolution, because that allows us to look at the resolution from the vantage point of experts and actually gain a lot of education and like basically see things from the lens of a policymaker. But I also want to add some other like extra standards here. Being topical is going to be really important for like policymaking, education, and activism, because if there's no ability for both teams to be able to interact with each other's arguments and actually be able to truth test the affirmative in any way, that renders us incapable of being able to test this particular policy. That makes it impossible to gain any policymaking education in this round. And that's going to be really important because understanding policymaking and activism is going to be the internal link to our activism and advocacy skills outside of this round, which means that what happens in this round has a bearing on what's outside of this round. And so the education in this round is going to be really important for our ability to advocate for ourselves, especially since this topic is specifically about the manufacturing industry. A lot of the U.S. population works in the manufacturing industry. Some of us have families that and family members that work in the manufacturing industry. These policies, decisions have bearing on people's lives. And so discussing, having a vantage point to discuss would allow us to actually take these activism skills outside of this round. Any other things you want to add, Gus? Okay, on to the voters, and then I'll talk about previews. They haven't touched the voters whatsoever. You can extend across a priori, which for reasons for fairness and predictable ground, which means that it's going to be the question of T is going to be a prior question to any of their arguments on the case or arguments on our disadvantages. You're going to be weighing this first before you consider any of the impacts on their advantages. They can't weigh the affirmative against the theory, but also extend across the fact that fairness is going to be the internal link to education. They haven't responded to this whatsoever, insofar as we've been unable to utilize the prep that the prep that we had during the debate, and basically they were able to get out of all of our warranted of substantial arguments by saying that that's not us. That is an indication as to why we weren't able to get good education. Extend across the argument that non-topical education is bad education because we can't truth test the affirmative. If there's an inability for us to respond to the affirmative or use our disadvantages to respond to the affirmative because they're always able to say that's not us, then that's an indication as to why you can just on the flow presume all of their arguments true, even though it maybe in the real world they're not necessarily true, which is the reason why that would be bad for education. And education is going to be really key for for the reason I mentioned earlier for activism skills, but also it's also going to be really key because it's probably the main reason we do debate, and the biggest thing that we get from doing debate is education about policy and about various issues in the world. Also extend across collapse of debate, which goes cold conceded, which is going to be the biggest proximal impact. With not being topical pushes negative teams out of the basically disenchants negative teams, and it makes them not want to participate in the debate, because if we're not going to talk about a central point, or if we're not going to allow the negative to actually compete or clash with the affirmative on substantial arguments, then that's not a fun debate. Now onto the proven abuse. There are a couple of instances in the last speech that, and also the speech before that, that basically prove that they have been able to skew us out of the round and basically not actually respond to our disadvantages with anything substantial. First, on the disadvantage, they were able to no-link it because they said that they're green technology and they're a progressive the politics disadvantage. They were able to say, oh, but green technology is a progressive strategy that looks bad for Trump. They were able to make that no-link argument, and that makes it impossible for us to leverage the politics disadvantage against their AF. But also on the case, on the responses to the case dump, which are particularly a good example of this. They basically non-unique everything we say, because they say because they say that all of those that area of the manufacturing industry that we're talking about doesn't matter to the AF, and the AF doesn't do anything with it. They just let it fail. They were basically able to pick one part of the manufacturing industry to protect and leave everything else to die, and garner some advantage over letting it die. And also we're able to criticize the status quo for not being able to do anything, which is a huge reason why we lost a ton of ground. Not only did we lose a ton of ground in this debate, but they were able to non-unique all of our case dump answers about specifically why manufacturing is bad. And they were also able to no-link out of our disadvantage, which is where you should just pull the trigger on the T.
Is everybody not ready? Cool. Just going to be overview, and then probably guessed it, T. All right. Time starts now. Judge, it's a pretty easy vote for the negative, and I think Arshita does a pretty good job explaining why it's such an easy vote for the negative. Now, onto the T. To truly avoid the inherent collapse of debate and how we're all going to be losing out on key access to education, we need to be pulling the trigger on the T right now, Judge. You should be signing your ballot to Pacific GC at this very moment. Extend across all of the things that Arshita was saying about extending across our own definition, and how it's so specific to allow us to have clash on this debate. For the violations, they don't do a good enough job. In fact, they don't really even touch any of the violations that we have laid out. And Arshita does a pretty good job explaining as to how we specifically lose access to key ground in this debate. They specifically pick renewable energy instead of defending the entire manufacturing industry. And we tell you that's bad, because our definition defines the entirety of the manufacturing industry. And it's the best way to actually have a good discussion about how the manufacturing industry is going to be affected, Judge. Just continue to extend across the violations for their only best bet was their we meets, but their we meets don't do a good enough job of doing anything to this debate. Like, all they say is it's different, but specifically we're saying that's really bad. And their counterinterpretation, it literally just allows them to do whatever they want. We even try to pinpoint them on something that they could do, and all they do is try and shift by saying, we don't do that, or we'll be able to fix this down the road with more investments and stuff. See how they're trying to garner all of the ground and all of these things that they don't really have access to, which is going to be crucial, because that just gives you more ammo as to why we're being skewed out of the ground. So for standards, cold conceded throughout every single one of their speeches, Judge. For the limits, we could not engage any of this debate without the limits. We tried, but all they did was go on to provenly abuse the negative by just saying, we don't link to it, or we fix it, or we get to do it. Our definition set the most precise limit right out the gate, because the most precise limit is the best, because it enables us to better understand all of the individual words in the resolution, and it would have brought a more equitable debate to this round, Judge, but we lost crucial access to all of that. For our field context, we used a specific definition, like Rashida said, from NASA, who's in the manufacturing industry. They don't even give a source on their definition. They don't tell you why to prefer their definition. They don't give you any of that, Judge, which means you're going to be preferring the negatives counter definition on this matter. For the voters, no matter what they try to go for in the affirmative, Judge, don't buy any of the arguments that they're saying, because they cold conceded the a priori voting issue, which means you're going to be looking here first, Judge. The fairness and predictable ground is some of the biggest impacts that we talk about in this debate, because we literally had to collapse to tea, Judge. You're listening to 12 minutes worth of tea discussion when we could have been talking about something a lot more fun and a lot more equitable in this ground, but we don't. We specifically don't. And we're going to be extending across all of these things, extend across the a priori, weigh this first before anything that comes into case. They have no access to like all of these impacts. They're going to try and go hard for probably like environmentalism and like climate justice, but don't let them get any access to that. What's up, Rashida?
Extend education and activism.
Yeah, extend the really nice analysis that Arshida was making on education and activism when we don't have any access to this. What's the point of debate when we don't learn how to specifically have activism for ourselves and our own bodies, Judge? This goes into why the collapse of debate is bad, because we will all be losing key access to activism in this round. Extend across all the proven abuse that Arshida was giving you. Extend across the extension of the non-topical education being the biggest reason why you're not going to be doing this, because we can't truth test the affirmative. Even when we try to, they tell you like, oh, we don't do that. We actually like make it better through future investments down the long run. Don't buy any of that, Judge. They can cold concede the entirety of the tea, so you're going to be voting right there. It's easy.
Starting flex now.
And we're out of time, right? So I'm going to go T and then through arguments that, yeah, I'll just go T and then our advantages, their disadvantages, analyzing debate, essentially. Starting, wait, I'm going to give a timer. Starting now. So on the T front, a lot of what was done on this is done on one of our We Meets. They even mentioned in their second negative speech that we had 2 We Meets. The first one, of course, was the realness of the solar power in comparison to other forms of energy. But the other We Meet really wasn't addressed. The spilling over of the effects from investing in renewable energy, that the effects of renewable energy spill over into other industries, strengthening them, which inherently protects those industries from foreign competition. They said we should look towards, or we should topicality is important for this argument. Again, no response to spillover. We were perfectly topical. That met their definition. It expands to all industries that exist in the status quo. All industries still exist in the world of the affirmative. It's just some of them aren't being subsidized. Rather than completely destroying those industries, we're allowing them to take part in the advantages gained from having renewable energy that will allow them to sustain their production for years to come. As we stated in our first speech, oil can run out and will potentially run out within 57 years if we don't change our mode of production. That's not something that's going to secure longevity if we allow the current mode of production to take place. And remember, we define protection as securing longevity. So now moving on to our advantages, that were the environment, first of all. They said they lost net ground on this, that there were no substantial arguments. They could have easily argued against the immediacy of putting in all of these subsidies.
Point of
Yes.
order.
Yeah.
Any response to these arguments on the T or no?
Yeah, these are still response to arguments. Yeah, I shouldn't have gone on to advantages. This is still responses to arguments on the T. Is that?
It's a panel, so we'll take it into consideration.
Okay.
Spillover arguments in my speech.
Yeah, and he made the spillover arguments in his speech. So on the proven abuse points, the point about no substantial arguments. On the environmental advantage, they said there was no net ground that we non-unique certain things. This is true, but there were other arguments they could have made. Arguments against the immediacy of shifting over subsidies directly to fossil fuels without any transition period. That's an argument they could have made. Whether or not it's a good one, that's up to the judges. But it was never made, so it can't be considered. They were able to make some of their neg arguments, and they were able to expand some of them, but they didn't. On the point about Trump losing union support, they could have argued that even if it does have any net positive, it's going to shine good on Trump. Again, that's whether or not that's a good argument is irrelevant because they did not make it. They could have extended that. We could have had a debate on like the merits of the politics advantages in parliamentary debate and whether or not enacting progressive legislation during a Republican presidency is effective at actually stopping them from being reelected, but we didn't. They decided to run with this T argument and completely ignore our argument about spilling over into other industries. Onto the point about the Chinese-American trade war that comes from this, again, they said we non-unique their answers, but they even mentioned in their first speech that it could incite a trade war, that it could potentially cause our manufacturing to increase to the point where it competes with China. They even admitted that green energy can cause our manufacturing industry to increase. So they admit the impacts of the affirmative. And in order for them to not have any net ground, that we would have to somehow create some sort of argument that would not allow for the manufacturing industry to increase. But again, they did not respond to that whatsoever. They did not continue that line of argument, and they weren't able to substantiate that further. They just went with the T argument in their second negative speech. We gain all the benefits from the de-escalation, the things about co-opetition, about how the United States and China can cooperate on producing more green energy, which will spill over into other jobs. And on the climate justice point, again, they can't gain the REM benefits unless they defend the status quo. It's
they were forced to defend the status quo, but they could have run a CP.
Right, they could have ran a CP instead of running to defend the status quo. So, judge, vote for the affirmative because we met all of the requirements displayed by the negative. Thank you. I can still hear, just I won't be able to respond to anything.
we just got an email from Steve to not disclose. Because
So they just have to wait for pairings to find out if they made it into finals?
is this semis?
This is semis.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Steve, you're muted if you're trying to talk to us.
Not you.
Yeah, so if this is semis, we'll disclose. If it's finals, they have to wait.
Okay, sorry. When he called me and said they had a ballot to push to me, he accidentally said finals, so I thought this was finals.
Okay.
So this, just to be clear, this is semis? All right. Well then, in that case, congratulations on everybody making it to semifinals. So good job. In a ridiculously close margin of error, it is a 2-1 decision for the negative. So congratulations, negative. I voted affirmative, so I guess I'll start. Sorry, I have the affirmative making the argument of spillover. I have it untouched by the negative. They never talk about the spillover affecting the rest of the industry, why that won't happen. And you have the effects and extra T in the shell. The words effects topical or extra topical never pass the lips of the MO. I was literally just sitting here waiting for you to say that, and the round ends right there. Like, if you listen to the PMR, a third of his speech is the effects of this spillover. Right? That's where they're getting all of this from. All of your disad links or anything could have come from that. I don't have a single answer. The closest we have is the LOR saying extend all our violations across. That's not going to be enough for me to beat back why their we meet doesn't meet or is effects or anything like that. You need to do more explanation for me. I think they have spillover. They affect the entire industry. The MG talks about how it's going to be giving them the means to be able to do all of their machines and manufacturing, which is what your main definition talks about. No articulation on that. I vote AF. So Oliver or Keenan, next.
I can go next. I vote affirmative, or I vote negative. I vote for UOP because basically y'all didn't answer T. In the MG, there's no answer to standards and there's no answer to voters. There's just like kind of a we meet your interpretation and we also meet our counter interpretation. But there's no response to like how it relates to education and fairness, how it skews them out of round, why it's like the first question, why it's a priori. None of that is ever touched. So it's just like not answered for me. So I end up voting on that. And then I have some brief feedback for each team. I really don't like Forensics Tournament compared to Tab Room because I have to like screenshot my stuff and then read it after because it doesn't show you. So for affirmative, it's just work on your T responses. Ideally, you should have 4 to 5 responses instead of like 2 we meets. It should be like we meet, counter interp, prefer, counter interp, not a voting issue, etc. There's more. You did kind of give a counter interp, but it needed more structure. Your first advantage is really solid. Your second advantage could use some more warrants for why competition with China over green energy would lead to collaboration when it hasn't so far. So I don't really buy that that's going to happen because it's just not, it's unwarranted and it's not articulated enough for me. Overall, prepare more for topicality because the plan isn't topical. I have no problem voting for a non-topical plan if it's defended right, but there just wasn't enough for how the plan does affect the metal and ore and lumber and rare earth mineral industries and how it's topical despite not relating to them. For EOP, I think y'all make the right decision focusing on T in the neg block and gave the right arguments about how they skew you out of the round because they can shift and unlink out of the disads not being topical. However, I do wish you had kept your second disadvantage because they can't link out of rare earth minerals. The plan directly increases the production of rare earth minerals in order to like create green tech because all green tech relies on it. So that turns their advantages. And you should also add the coups in South America over rare earth minerals to the point of like Elon Musk even tweeted, we'll coup whoever we want in response to like getting materials for his technology. Like that's blatant, outright like admission. And also that wars for oil are going to shift to wars for lithium and cobalt. So they can't prevent their climate change impacts because the US military is the world's largest polluter. So unless they can solve for the US military, they can't solve for the environment. So basically turn their case on rare earth minerals and take out their solvency on lithium wars. Either way, I did like that you collapsed to T because they truly didn't really answer it until their PMR.
Yeah, I'll start with, I was going to say the exact same thing for the neg. I wish you had gone in on rare earth minerals. That's obviously not my RFD, but that is like, I wanted to say it because I had the same thought. I think sometimes when we go for T in the NR, we think like all or nothing is the only way to do it. And I put this in your comments on your ballot where like you can get a lot of really good work done by splitting up the block with some work on your disads in the 2NC and some like really explicit like setting up like where those loose threads are, setting up where double binds exist, and like, you know, with like your second constructive kind of like setting everything up, and then the NR just being like, T, here's how it all connects, right? And I think we have this idea that like if we don't only go for T, then we're admitting that we can have an on-topic debate. And I don't, especially with stuff like the rare earth minerals, like section of that disad, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you don't have to go super deep on T 100% for it to be like an effective argument. So I totally agree with that idea. In terms of my RFD, funny enough, I went back and forth between exactly the reasons that both other judges gave. When I was like debating between the two, I was like, well, spillover, but also like they didn't answer voters at all. But I ended up kind of voting, for me, I agree that spillover wasn't answered by the neg, but I don't think that the affirmative gives really clear offense on why spillover specifically fulfills other sections of manufacturing. The AR talked a lot about spillover moving into other industries. And I think he kind of got lost in the weeds there. So everything I had on the flow in the AR was like, we're going to spill over to other industries. We're going to, you know, other industries. And I think by like stepping back for a second and being like, they could have made an argument that effects topicality is bad, but they didn't. So look at our effects. We're saying that the effect is that we're going to increase manufacturing. So cool. Like if they're not going to argue against effects T, then cool. We're effects T. Let's move on to the case. And I think in the absence of something really explicit like that, I was kind of left thinking like, okay, the spillover argument exists, but there's nothing in round on the flow that's really convincing me how it ties into manufacturing, because you talked about just other industries a lot around it. And in the absence of that, I deferred to that same, like, well, you didn't answer voters, you didn't answer like the a priori argument. And I think all of those ended up being a neg ballot for me. But I think just a little more clarity and offense on specifically how spillover makes you topical and how that fits in would have been more effective. It was definitely a really close ballot for me.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions?
This is a little bit smaller, but should I put T on top of my speech if it was like a kind of sketch untopical AF? Or does it really not matter?
In general, you should always put theory arguments first in your speech for both sides.
Yeah, theory arguments are a priori on voting, so it's best to keep them a priori on your flow as well.
And also, if you don't get to it in time, then that's going to make your life really difficult. Whereas at least a disad or something like that, you'll have case to weigh against or a turn on another disad. For theory, it's just the theory unless you have some critical trick on case. And so it's always good to be able to make sure you have your time for that. That's why you prioritize that near the beginning.
And that'll be more important if you go against a team that does like, 1,000 spec arguments as a time suck.
Mm-hmm. Or if you know the team is wanting to debate the T. Like I don't think that was UOP's number one strategy going into the round is, haha, we're totally going to get them because they're going to be a narrow case, right? And so, if it's somebody that loves T, that might affect your prioritization. But otherwise, I would put it near the top to make sure you get all of those arguments that Oliver's talking about and Brennan's talking or Keegan's talking about, to make sure that all of those basic defense against T is there. So that way, if something spins a little bit different than how you thought it was, oh crap, now we need to go back to our second line of defense, that's there. And it sounds like that might be why they didn't vote on the T, was there wasn't anything to fall back on. So negative, I think that one way you could have solidified your structure on the T is run a definition on the word the. Like manufacturing industry is kind of this group mass noun type thing, and you're just doing a sliver of it. That's not really a parametrization type idea. When it says the industry, that I think would solidify your interpretation a little bit more. But anyway, good round, y'all.
Good luck in the finals.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.